Welcome on into The Point with Kristen Burr, presented by Dance Network and Popcorn Talk. We are so excited you guys are joining us here today, and we're live. We weren't sure if we're going to be live, but we're live, so this is even more exciting. And we are kind of putting a little button on the whole Season 3 World of Dance season by having Derion and Madison join us today. You guys, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
I know.
You
guys are putting a cap on the season for me. Yes, a cap. I like it. And Derion, obviously, we had you on the AfterBuzz TV World of Dance after show, so we might go touch on a few things that we talked about there. But now we have Madison kind of joining the equation. So thanks for coming. I know.
Happy to be here.
I know. We're excited about this. You know, I always like to ask everyone that's done World of Dance. You guys have had a lot of time to kind of marinate in this because you filmed it in the fall of 2018 and then kind of had to wait this whole time for it to play out. Overall, can you kind of just give me an idea of like how you feel about the entire season now that you can kind of look back and give it some perspective?
The biggest thing we feel, I mean, at least I feel, is I feel grateful for the experience because it pushed us as creators. Like, we had to create, you know, something new every week, and we didn't bring anything that we had already choreographed. So we were like, all right, another week back in the studio, and we couldn't really celebrate our victories right after because we just had to think about what the next piece was going to be. So now looking back on it, it's nice to just appreciate the work that we did and be like, all things considered, we're proud. Yeah.
We did it.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the craziest things was we relearned, what was it, Call Out My Name? Or we were rehearsing our Woo because we did an interview with KTLA. And when we did our first run through of it, we were like, that's hard.
We really left no room for error in any of our pieces.
You gave yourself a big challenge, and you rose to that challenge, which is pretty incredible. Going back to the beginning, are there things that you would do differently in terms of choreography? Because I know you were saying you were choreographing week to week. Now, people take very different approaches. Last week with Unity LA, Tassandra's like, I came in with 10 numbers.
Totally.
Which is ridiculous, honestly. But they started rehearsing last May, and then they would sort of, you know, okay, this might work. We got music clearance for this. This is what we'll do.
Right.
Would you do a strategy like that again? Or what you did worked well for you, and you wouldn't do it any differently?
Choreographically, I feel our process is we struggle the first 4 or 5 days, and then right before we actually do, a camera block on stage, we're like, this is the piece. We figured it out. And then we're like, this is good. The one thing that was the hardest struggle was finding a song, because NBC is just very particular on the music that gets accepted and copyright reasons, all that.
And then, it's a several part process. Like, NBC has to clear the song, and then, the artist has to clear the song. And then it's like our producer would text us and be like, your song is 50% cleared.
You're like,
so are we going to get it?
We're like, so the first half or the second half or like...
Right, what
you're
part?
like, yeah, are we closer to the end or do...
Right.
So what is that struggle like in terms of choreography? Because are you just kind of like, we're just going to do movement in our brain? Because there are certain moments in a song where there's a crescendo and maybe you want to have a big move there. And then you want to have softer moments. I've got to imagine that's a bit of a challenge when you're running up against time.
It was definitely one of the biggest challenges was the music. And the cool thing was for Call Out My Name, or the cut round, we didn't really we weren't super sold on the song. And we were like, I don't know, and then...
Because the original song we had wanted to use was not cleared until it was said that it was cleared, and then last minute they're like, actually it's not. But this song is for sure cleared. And so it looks like this is your only option.
Was this your B song at all? Like, where you're like, oh, okay, we'll just do Call Out Your Name?
It was on the list, but it wasn't...
It wasn't our first choice. So we had a lot of struggle just seeing what we could do with that song, and we didn't feel like it built properly, and we're like, oh, we were so stuck. That week was the hardest week for us.
Isn't that funny? And that was such a nice piece, too, because I felt like it really contrasted what you had done in the earlier rounds. And so I kind of felt like it was a pivotal piece to get you to Divisional Finals.
And, that's how we felt, too, because at the end of it, I was like, this is my favorite thing we've done.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how it works out sometimes? And sometimes I think the struggle gives you an artistic breakthrough that you needed and you didn't know you needed.
So true.
Can you tell us what the song was that you originally wanted?
The song was If I Ever Fall in Love Again by Shy.
Ooh.
It's like, ooh, da doo 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 doo. It was an a cappella cover. So this was the problem was we had the original song cleared, but it was full. It was a really full song. And then the song that we had wanted was an a cappella version, which was really syncopated and it was just really bare bones. And they were like, that song doesn't get cleared. We're like, no. Like, can't you just do it the other one? We're like, no, you don't understand. It's totally different.
Yeah, like mortified when we were in there and they played the other version. And
We're staring at each other
both like, this is not the right version of the
Not our
song.
style. Not what we want. And it's hard too because you're on a TV show and you're working with producers and you don't want to be trouble, which we always I don't want to be difficult.
Yes.
But there are also things of standing up for yourself as an artist too.
That's an amazing point because we had to learn that along the way in terms of being interviewed and you're put in this spotlight and you feel in the beginning like you have to be this person that you've been created on a huge platform to be. And so you start to adjust your answers in a way that favors what you think they would want. And then you're like, why do I feel this pressure? And we started to learn the system in a sense of how, okay, we can say no to certain questions or we can actually ask for more time because this is our art and it's beyond the TV show. It's beyond the fame and the platform. It's like, we actually have to look good out there and we don't want to hurt ourselves too.
You want to be authentic and true to who you are and represent.
Yes.
If people meet you in person, you want to be that person. You want to be like, oh, well, what you saw on TV was totally different.
Right.
The first day we said no in an interview, we both left the interview and we were like, we said no.
We can say no.
Why didn't we ever realize we could say no sometimes?
Well, I think the way the system is set up too, because you have this amazing opportunity on NBC, and you're like, this is broadcast television. It's J-Lo, and I think I would question myself too, thinking, well, I'm supposed to say yes in this situation, or I'm supposed to do this, but then you start thinking, wait a minute. I don't want to say yes.
Yeah, there's something inside of you, and it's your gut feeling, and it's like churning, and it's like maybe not.
Yeah, Oprah's always telling you to go with your gut instinct.
Yeah,
and Oprah's always right, isn't she? Always.
I know her so well.
Yes, exactly.
So well. I was having tea with her the other day, and you know what she told me.
No, well, it feels like that in your living room sometimes. You watch some of the old episodes, but she always gave like advice like that, and you said, and I think she gives you permission, and you're like, well, if Oprah said it, then it's totally going that way. Something interesting last week, Unity LA, we were talking, and I can't remember if the whole exchange happened on camera or off camera, but they said we wanted to talk to Derion and Madison so much during the season. Isn't this interesting?
Well,
I know.
nice.
And they felt like we didn't get to see them because we were in different divisions.
Yes,
but
true.
Ashley and Zach felt like after Divisional Finals, where the little stumble happened, they had something that happened in season 2 to them, where Ashley had gotten caught up in, they had the big, what's the word I want to use? But,
it was a prop.
Like
it was a prop, not a prop. It kind of hung, the large
the
ribbon kind of thing. Yes. I don't even know, curtain, whatever.
Silk?
But silk. It was a silk. Thank you. That's it. We're going to get there too. I was like, it's like a word game here. So that she had a silk, and her foot got caught in, and she did a little trip, and they sat there and they lived with it for a really long time, and it was why they wanted to come back for season 3.
And they talked
with, I know, isn't this crazy? Amazing. So this was a whole thing, and coming back with the Unity LA and doing something a little bit different, and they felt like they just wanted to share with you like their experience and how it came out, and wanted to make sure you guys didn't beat yourself up about it.
Totally.
So how did you beat yourself up about it?
Oof.
Have you moved beyond it? But this is legitimate because this happens all the time, and it's
like
real.
Your biggest nightmare. But at the time is what it felt like. It was like, it's like anything drastic in your life, a breakup or, any sort of mess up, and it just feels like the biggest thing, and you have nothing to do but sit and swallow it. And every time I thought back to that episode, I was left with like this awful feeling, even from the whole show after I left. And I was like, why would I let something so small completely alter my whole incredible experience? But in the moment, it felt like the biggest deal in the world. And when we look back on it, we just high five ourselves for trying something really new and hard. And the whole routine in and of itself we didn't get to celebrate enough because we just kept honing in on this one.
When it's a fraction
One
of a
little-
moment,
right.
too.
It's such a moment.
And the crazy part was once it had happened, nothing else mattered for the judges or anything. It was just
Right.
like,
They checked out.
yeah, missed. I mean, and it was at the end, so they had watched the whole dance, but our only feedback was about.
I also do, when I look back on it and I think back to that feeling, I feel like I was radiating this energy of like disappointment and like fury and all these feelings. And when Derek had he noticed that, he felt it, and he was like, what's going on? Granted, they might have just known already, but I think that us calling attention to it created this, focus on that one idea.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, and so I think when I look back, one thing I do wish is that it wasn't what I brought so much attention to as well. What we together could have just been like, yeah, that last move actually didn't work out so well. And that's that.
Yeah, and
because
we
that's what
saw
it
the
really
rehearsal
is.
of it. It looks amazing. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I think too, from a viewer perspective, and just to give you guys a little bit more like of a icing
Yeah.
on the cake to it, like when I think of you guys, I don't think of that.
Right.
So I
No,
went
that's
back
great to
today
hear.
and I was watching all of the videos, and I think the divisional final thing is actually off the internet too. It's been removed, by the way.
Oh, really?
Which means music clearance. It was. They only had a limited time to use it on YouTube, so.
Shame.
It's gone.
Shame.
And nobody has. There's no. I know you're like shame. Too bad. Bye. I couldn't find a viewer who had copied it and thrown it up on YouTube either, so it's not there. But I watched everything from the qualifiers and the duels and the cut, and that's what I remember. I mean, for me, the duels was one of my favorite.
Oh, thank
pieces.
you. That was one of our favorites too.
Was it really? I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you why I loved it, because it was like you guys had this really wonderful balance between the tricks that you do and then this great like moment where there was a breakdown in the music and you guys just started like dancing. And like dancing across that stage, and I always like will rewind back to that moment because I'm like, here comes the breakdown, boom.
It's funny you say that because one of our fears was to be like, we don't want it to be like trick central and then now we dance. We always wanted to be dancing regardless. Like the whole thing was a dance. But we were aware of the fact that, the interpretation of two bodies that are constantly using each other as partnering could almost appear just by the YouTube comments like gymnastic-y. That's how people would say. Feels like fluid gymnastics.
Breyer got a lot of this too. You're not
Yeah.
the Kings got a lot of this. This is not
It's hard on a
Yeah.
show like that when, there's this pressure to have wow moments. And we talked about this with Derek. Like, what is a wow moment? How do you define it? Is it a trick? Maybe. A lot of people fall on tricks for a wow moment. Another thing could be this build-up and it's an emotional moment.
Which is kind of the direction we went after our mentoring session with him. He told us, he was like, you need to give me like a wow moment.
Yeah.
You know that thing where, wow.
That's a Derek thing too.
Derek's eyes.
And he said that to us, and we like went and we were like, what does this even mean? What are we gonna do? It doesn't even make sense with the piece to have like a wow right there. So like I did this big dive roll over her when
That was
she
one
ducked.
option.
Yeah. And then like we were exhausted at the hotel rehearsing on like a cement floor.
Yeah,
covered in
Always a
carpet.
good
In the
idea.
lobby somewhere. Like,
Yeah.
couldn't find any space. So we're like, we need to figure this out.
And and like we were at the end of the rehearsal. I had stepped on glass, and we were both just
Oh my
tired.
gosh. I remember that.
And we were like, you know what? Maybe it's just that I like go to grab your hand and you snatch it away. And we were like, wait, is that actually it? Is that it? And then he was like, you guys surprised me. You gave me a wow with a moment rather than
right.
a trick.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's the thing. We literally interpret the wow moment to be, oh, that's a trick in my brain. But the wow moment can be simplicity,
Totally.
or it can be a breath, or it can,
Yeah.
that's a good lesson right there.
Yeah.
Derek's a really good mentor.
He is.
It was great.
He really, we got to partner for a little bit and he had given us a few ideas about, just different ways for Derion to maybe not come off as like, I'm the guy that's lifting. And we always tried to avoid that when it comes to a male and female contemporary, duo, which the male ends up taking all the lifting and the girl gets to look pretty.
Where it's just like park and play. Like
Right.
if you watch him, he's just standing in one spot.
Right.
And so we always were like, okay, if we're partnering, how do I not look like a tree? Just standing
That's
there
right.
the
Well,
year
yeah,
time.
support me. Here I go. Here's another one. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
That's great though, because I mean, I think Derek has a really good eye to choreography. I just went to see his show on Saturday.
Oh, how was it?
It was great. And he utilized a lot of different choreographers, obviously, but it was 90 minutes of pretty much nonstop dance. He had a couple moments where, you know, he had to take it down because otherwise you would have been hit over the head with like so much intense dance. But I thought that the flow was really good. And I was like, you know, Derek along with Nappy Tabs like work together and they understand how to put a show together. So even just that little like, don't necessarily take a wow moment as this big, huge thing that you have to do. And I think sometimes because World of Dance, everything is like dance on steroids. We get, I mean, I think as an artist, if I were in your situation, I probably would have interpreted it as like, I need to like do something that I haven't done before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that there's so much misconception with, you know, a TV show like that where the stage behind you is already almost outshining you because of these bright lights and, you know, it's an LED screen and you feel this pressure to constantly be at a 100 and you only have 1:30 up there too, so you're like, well,
if they give you
I don't have that much room for subtlety. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's an effective choreographic approach of how to be subtle and still be big and impacting and keep the audience drawn in and the judges. I mean, what reads on camera is so different from what reads on that stage live.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And you have to worry about choreographing in the round on top of that.
Yeah. It's a big factor, actually. There are a lot of rehearsals where we're like, do we stay facing the judges? Do we perform out to the audience?
Right.
And eventually we settled on that, since this is going to be digested by mostly like the internet medium rather than, or the audience watching it on a screen, we were like, we should kind of always be performing to the camera, but in like subtle ways. Like we were trying to figure out judges, camera, or like audience. So,
it's not an easy balance on that stage whatsoever. I mean, I've got to imagine that there are probably moments you're thinking, this is going to look great right here, and then you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, when we
get
watch
out
the
there.
playback, we're like,
not the best
that
right
work
there.
out?
Not the best right there. But it is an amazing feeling to be surrounded by people when you're performing.
Yes.
You know, like
From
everywhere
every
you look,
direction.
they're just
And
people.
the pounding on the stage.
Yes.
I mean, it is an overwhelming experience to be a performer on that stage.
I think it was one of my favorite things was walking out. Like, there's just a real moment when you walk out, how loud it gets when you break from that hallway into the room. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my God.
You can't hear yourself
You're
breathe.
like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Aren't you glad you had each other? I think that the soloist is got to be a very lonely competition, only because you sit there and when you have those highs, you have no one to really share it with. Maybe your parents or your friends that are there. And then when you have a low, you're like, oh gosh.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you have a choreographer supporting you, but it's not
the
easy.
same.
It's also just a lot of waiting. Like,
Yeah. Yes, that's what I was going to say.
yeah.
Is we have our individual rooms that we sit in and we wait in, and one of the dancers we really connected with was Pop and John, and
love him.
I felt like he was a trio in our group because we would just hang out all the time. And I mean, I definitely felt like if I was alone up there, it would be a whole nother game, a whole nother experience.
I've got to imagine the stage feels lonely some days if you're thinking, I'm not sure how this routine was just interpreted by the judges. You know, that moment of just waiting to hear their feedback and scores.
Oh yeah,
That's
that
long, too.
moment is long.
So long. You're like, can I just know what you thought already? They're like, no, hold.
And that's cut on the show. You don't see that wait time when you watch the actual show because no one wants to sit through that. But
Well, I also thought it was interesting when I went to watch during the cut round, and I was interested to see how the judges still do a lot of interacting as they're voting, like especially J-Lo and Derek talk a lot. And I'm always like, what are they saying?
yeah,
I feel like she's like, no.
Slide. Slide. Let me take your finger. Hold on. I don't know. It was interesting watching the banter go back and forth. I felt like Neo was kind of on the outside of what J-Lo and Derek were saying sometimes. So
yeah. I also thought when I look back on, because sometimes I read the YouTube comments just out of curiosity.
to kill yourself because it's like
just just to understand what people say, what people feel about the show. And, you know, a lot of them are, why do you guys cut so much to the judges? Which the show will inevitably do that, or it won't. It's up to the show. But also the 3 judges that they have, which is Neo, J-Lo, and Derek. And I'm sitting there wondering, okay, why is this particular group chosen? Like, why are they representative of a general eye? And I feel, now that I look back on it, a lot of people, you know, pointed out Neo, and they were like, what does Neo have to say about dance? And I think Neo is an amazing representation of the general public.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Someone who may not know all the terms. He may not have the most dance experience like J-Lo and Derek do, but he's still someone that can feel it and you know, have something to say from it.
He loves his hip hop too.
Yeah.
Right.
He does love his
True.
hip hop, I think.
And that's one of the most important things, was wondering like how we would ask this a lot in rehearsal, but how is that going to make people feel? Like, or will this make them feel something?
Right.
And so I think that's a really good point to make, because yeah, like he's kind of the general public eye. So, you know, it's, he kind of he doesn't know what it is, but he knows when it's there. He's like, that was it.
Whatever that was, I loved it. Yeah, interesting. And you know, he is also someone that oftentimes is like, I need a story. He wants a narrative through a lot of things. And dance doesn't always have to be a narrative. I really do believe that. There's different situations and movement and music and that can speak for itself. But oftentimes he does want a story on something. Yeah. And so, but that's, I think some of the viewers at home going, I don't understand that. If it's too abstract.
Yes.
And there's no storyline. Yeah. They're like, I don't know if I like that. So that is kind of a good point of what he represents on that show. You did mention that your divisional finals number was edited. So do you know how much they kind of took out, like about 20 seconds off of you? Do you know?
So at the end of of the cut, one of Neo's responses was, I have nothing to say. Oh, okay, maybe one thing is, can you guys wear shoes? Or something like that, because we dance barefoot. So he just had this little joke that maybe next time wear shoes. That was his only critique. So we go through this big hullabaloo of our next routine to have slip-on shoes that we can pop off.
Yep.
And make it a little nod to Neo. So originally, we came walking out of the gates. They open up, and Derion does color guard. So he has this amazing technique with the cane that he can just toss it up, throw it, catch it in a hand.
Nice.
And he's like, I could probably teach you something, and I have butterfingers. So when we quickly discovered that level of uncoordination.
Very quickly.
So I try to twirl it, and I'm like, dude, no way. Not with the pressure. I could not do this.
I would slip right out of my hands. There's
no
way.
We got to do a simple little thing, and I have to be bad at it because I am bad at it. And he's like, okay, well, what if we make it like a joke where, like, you know, you go to do it and you're impressed by it. So I do a little twirl, and then he looks at me and he goes, and he does this crazy little flip. And out of anger, I just gash him in the knee with my cane because he embarrassed me. But they kind of took out that little interaction. So the gash of the knee comes out of nowhere. And it just looks like all of a sudden I just decided to hit him.
You're like, why did they?
Why?
That's a weird choice. Okay.
Why is she so mad at him?
Yeah.
Right, all of a sudden. So that's one thing where we were like, that definitely took out some context of who we were.
Some playfulness too.
Yeah, and I thought it was fun. And
we even had like a characterized like walk out.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just like we normally walked out.
Yeah.
Right. And took your position and everything, and there was a whole moment there.
And it was this cool little sound score too, where it was like the footsteps and then like the noises for the shoes popping off was like, and they like actually.
Well, they kept that. They just eliminated the flip.
Okay.
Yeah, they kept those two things.
Okay.
Interesting. I know. So then you watch it back, you're like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Not exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is one of those things that they're pressed for time and they move along, but it's I wish it wasn't the dances that they were editing. I think there's other elements that we could probably tighten up a little bit for season 4.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment that basically the ending, it'll take us a whole day of rehearsal to come up with, or that intro, it'll take us 6 hours to come up with what is that moment. And so when it's cut, as the choreographer and the artist, you're like, so much time that I just really wanted to be seen.
Especially people who like worked really hard and flew out there to be on the show, to be edited as like a montage. Like when they,
Yes.
I remember Serafina was a part of the ballerina. She was a ballerina, and she was with what was his? It started with an M.
Merlin?
It's something like it's Marlon,
Marlin.
I think, one of those.
I feel
But-
terrible if I'm butchering his name.
I know, and they were absolutely stunning. Like when I watched them backstage, I was like,
Yeah.
wow.
You're like, no joke. They're the real deal.
Yeah, and they were a part of like Derek's opening thing, like Derek Piquet. They were a part of his opening thing. It just showed him watching them on the screen backstage and a montage version, and that's all you saw of them.
They're not the only ones. I mean, this has happened in season 1 and 2, and I think that they it's one of those things. I think, do we need as many contestants if you can't show them? Do we need to make it a smaller, tighter cast?
Totally.
Possibly. Maybe they have some reasons for that. They're worried someone gets injured, someone drops out, and they don't have
We
backup.
need
But
enough editing material. Yeah.
right, there's always those situations. But then I start to think that I worry that we're cutting to the judges too much. There are moments like people start to turn to the back, and I'm like, well, what happened on that moment on the
Right.
stage when I'm looking at Neo or Derek or J-Lo? And I keep saying, I'm like, screen and screen. You can they do it in football, they do it in
Right.
other things. We can sit there and see the reactions and still see the dance here.
Right.
But I think there's enough frustration on the artist side to this
Yeah.
that something
worth
has to be retooled.
investigating.
It's worth investigating and seeing where they can tighten things up and move things around, and we'll see.
Like you work for hours on a certain transition. I know. And this was another conversation to have where we'd be like, okay, well, we don't know what they're going to show, so everything has to be good.
Right. Because in our mind, we don't know who's editing. And is the editor, well versed enough in dance to be like, oh, this moment needs to stay in, so let's cut from here when they're transitioning out of a move.
It's a good question.
But we don't know. So it could be that they edit the move and then they show us transitioning out of it. And yeah, like our second round, the divisional final, the
Duels.
duels.
the one that you liked, where I start on his head, and I'm basically crushing his entire neck.
All
But we spent so much time just to figure out these little articulations of our arms. And granted, we appreciate that they loved the image, but they just cut to their faces and their reaction to what it looks like. And so it's like, man, that part was so cool.
was
I just
such a
wish
good
that
part of
people
it.
got to see it.
I know. Now it means you have to
Dang.
do it everywhere.
Right.
You just have to keep on doing that so we can have the
Yeah.
opportunity to see it. How did your bodies hold up through this? Because your style is so incredibly athletic. You're dancing. It's a hard floor. I know it. It's not an easy
man.
one to just be like, let me just jump and leap and
Yeah.
do a couple lifts.
You also have to just do so many run-throughs in your like camera block and everything.
Yeah.
They're like, you need to do it at least 3 times full out.
In a row.
Yeah. And I just remember for the cut,
Yeah.
the
Very lift
move-
heavy.
Yeah, the move where she does like the back tuck around my arm, and then I like cartwheel her out. My arm felt like it was gonna pop off by the end of that week, and so
Yeah.
we just anytime we were backstage, she's like, I know, just massaging my shoulder. I'm like, it just
I owe you this.
She's-
Were you able to keep yourself? How were you able to keep yourself healthy? I mean, were you
Yeah.
doing the ice baths? Were you doing massage? Because you really had to make sure that you were at top level through this process.
Yeah. I mean, I felt like we were in some of the best shape we had been in a long time, just from the challenges of the lifts we were creating. And we don't even realize it because we go back and we revisit these things. We're like, wow, that took a lot of strength. And, I have back issues and neck issues that I've suffered from for a long time. But a lot of the moves we had to tailor because I have a fracture actually in my neck.
And you were out there just,
Yeah, but
wow.
Getting
I
picked
know.
up by her neck, in fact.
That's right. Do it.
Good idea, Derion.
But we always communicate each other like, this part I need more from you because it's hurting this, or I need less from you because I'm trying to pull you and you're working against me. Whatever it is, we just tell each other basically after every run, how was that for you?
Constant communication.
But it's
Yeah.
also one of the fastest instigators of if you're in a bad mood and like something hurts, you're like, it just hurts.
Yeah.
And you're like fighting with each other because something hurts, and
But no
you're-
one's doing anything wrong.
Yeah, you're both just trying to make the move happen.
Yeah.
You're like, well, you're doing this, and you're like, well,
You're just on edge.
well, I need you to do less, and you're like, just mad.
Yeah.
How long do your fights take? Are they brief and then you're over it, or are you just like?
We don't even really fight. I think it's more of like a stern. You can just feel the energy shift because 99% of the time we're goofballs and laughing and like that's so cool and we're like vibing, and then there's that like 1% time where it's not clicking and we're like, okay, well, what do you want to do here? I don't know, and
It's the frustration, I think. Yeah, more than anger. It's just like, you're just like, oh, I'm so aggravated right now. I need to figure this out.
Yeah.
And you have to have that too, though. Yeah, because if you keep it all inside, that little moment of frustration becomes an explosion.
Yeah, and that was what was really cool about the process. A lot of the time was, even if you didn't talk about it right away, at a certain point, each of us, if we ever had something, we're like, I just got to say this so that I can like let it go and we can keep rehearsing.
Yeah.
But like that kind of upset me, or like whatever. And then the cool thing was it just felt like once it was out, it was so much easier to move past it.
Like we're done.
Marriage.
Yeah.
I feel like we are.
It's a dance marriage.
Married. Yeah, totally. And any relationship, if you start to have you hold these resentments, you hold these bitter feelings, it's just gonna trickle and affect everything and
Festers.
everyone. Yeah.
We don't want it to fester ever.
Yeah. And we value too much what we create together and just each other as people that it's like, no, I definitely see this long term, so let's figure out where to nip it, right away.
Did this inspire you guys to think more long term beyond the show?
Yeah, totally. I mean, this show just kind of gave us this, not that artists should rely on validation, but it gave us a validating experience to be like, okay, we could totally keep creating work together and it's great. We're really proud of it.
And that was like part of why we wanted to do it in the first place. We were like, we want to be able to get our work out there because, a lot of people end up complaining about things they see and everyone's just like, I don't like that. I don't like that because of this. And I'm like, I found that in doing that, I was like, why am I complaining about it? Why don't I just go out there and try and change it by doing what I think should be done? And it was just like a pretty interesting take to have on it when I thought about it. I was like, yeah, I guess that's the active way to go about changing that.
Isn't that it's so true, because this town especially, you know, and I'm sure New York has its own flavor of it too, but we sit there and we think, well, why is this done this way? Or why you know what? Just go out there and create it and do it, and people will show up because they're going to be inspired by what you're doing, and maybe you inspire another generation too, because we can either all do the same thing, which is boring, and that doesn't propel art forward at all.
And then you can just be bitter and sit behind a screen and be like, commercial dance is meh, or whatever, you know, about your feelings. And because we come from a concert stage background mostly, and there is a small dichotomy of the concert world that, you know, doesn't necessarily love commercial dance. There's a bit of like a, what is that? And part of it comes from fear. Like, could I even do that? Part of it comes from, it's cheesy, or whatever, you know, whatever people feel about it. And we're like, but how can we just put our own flavor to it and still be true to yourself, which is kind of tying back to the very beginning of our conversation, which is just being genuine.
Well, it's interesting. And last year, Dance USA Conference was here in Los Angeles, and I hosted a panel on commercial dance and concert dance and how we bridge the gap.
Awesome.
And it was an hour and a half panel, and when they told me it was 90 minutes, I thought, it's a really long time for a panel. We could have gone on for 4 hours, people. And it was very passionate. And I think that there's a lot of pointing fingers on both sides of the community saying, well, you already make more money as commercial dance. Concert dance is saying, we're totally different. We don't make enough money. But there's a way to elevate everybody's salaries by working together. Concert dance will never make the same amount of money as commercial dance just because of where the funding is coming from. However, we can elevate resources and funding on both sides by sharing ideas of what works in the concert side and what works in the commercial dance side. And but it was a wild panel. I was like, holy cow. And finally at the end of the panel, like we had no minutes left. And I literally had to be like, I had to see one of the speakers. I was like, you are so passionate, but I have to cut you off.
Oh, I'm going to have to go watch that.
It wasn't even taped. Isn't that the worst part? It was at USC Kaufman. It was amazing.
Oh, wow.
In their beautiful facilities. And it was a wild day. I still like have not forgotten it because it's weighed on my brain too, because I, as a commercial dance reporter, there's times, and we were talking about this before I went in the air, like I do want to cover more that happens here in Los Angeles in the commercial dance scene. On the concert dance scene, but we're not getting the views and the clicks, and so I have to sit there and
evaluate.
Evaluate. How can I tie certain things in? When can I feature someone?
Right.
You know, and it's a fine line. And so you did Diavolo with America's Got Talent. When they do something like that, that becomes an opportunity. It becomes an opportunity for me to bring in the concert dance world and marry it with commercial dance. And that's when everyone has to just be open to all of these opportunities. Commercial dance needs to take opportunities on the concert dance side. It's crazy.
That's kind of like was our approach to the show. Actually, was a lot of like, how do we bridge that gap? How do we show and tell a story? How do we also get the wow moment so that the audience with like an attention span of 90 seconds is impressed and wants to watch it? Because there are times where 90 seconds feels long. You see some things and you're like, man.
You're like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I was good at 60 seconds. I'm out.
And then you realize you're like, I couldn't sit here and pay attention to this for 90 seconds. I was like over it in 60.
Right.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is, and we all have shorter attention spans because we're constantly on our phones. It's crazy. I see it happen with myself. Sometimes I'm like, wait, I'm trying to complete 3 tasks, and I've been in 3 different places.
Refreshing or whatever it is.
Yes, which reminded me, we do have a couple of viewer questions for you guys.
That's fun.
I know, I love this.
I like questions.
You like questions? We got questions. Cheryl asked, did you guys feel it was worth to give up your jobs to focus in on World of Dance? That's going back to obviously leaving Diavolo and focusing on World of Dance.
Absolutely.
Totally. 100%.
No regrets. Not even like
The feeling of, leaving a company when it's mid-touring season is hard because you kind of feel like you let everybody down that's there to be left with, okay, we're leaving, and now we were the 2 leads of this show that was on tour. And we had backups that were there, but it was definitely hard on the company.
It's a big loss to them, of course,
Totally.
and for you as well.
Yeah, and it's a family that we kind of had to like divorce from for a little bit. So there was no way that those 2 worlds could coexist, just in the scheduling of the tour and the show. And yeah, we felt really strongly about this show, and I don't regret anything. And we have great relationship now with our boss, and everything's all right. So
I've got to imagine that there is some understanding after a little bit of hurt feelings, because that comes into play, because that's just human nature. But understanding the opportunity, you guys did do America's Got Talent, so there's an understanding there of what that brings to the table.
Totally.
Because it did wonderful things for Diavolo. I mean, they're like the in-house, I think, company now over at the Wallace. So yeah, I mean they're getting a little,
awesome.
or they're getting like a nice little season with them. So I mean, I think that these are nice opportunities too. So
I would say maybe the only thing that I regretted was like not knowing that my last show was my last show.
Right. We could have never known that. Yeah, because
and living in that moment.
Yeah.
We finished at the Amundsen.
The Music Center.
Yeah, and
Here in Los Angeles, for people that are across the globe.
And that was our last show, and so not knowing was probably the sad part. And like all the things that come along with it when the group like hugs you because it's your last show, and like the little moments that happen on stage when it's someone's last show. So like not getting to have that was sad.
Yeah, because the goodbye was kind of just cut off.
Yeah, it wasn't really goodbye. It was just like, hup, and we're disconnected.
But I'm glad to hear that fences are mended and people they understand. It's just, sometimes it just takes that little like, we got to take a breath. We'll all come back to the table again.
It's that same idea where of our divisional finals, the ending thing, like everything feels so huge and heated in the moment, and then you just, as life goes on, you're like, oh, no,
It's
all
never
good.
going to define
It's
you
never
as a
as bad.
duo. It's never going to.
Right.
It
Yeah.
was a moment in time.
And we still have so much love for the company. It's like one of the most incredible companies I've ever been a part of. And it teaches you how to be alive like the most alive I think you could ever be on stage is definitely with Diavolo, because you're constantly like fending for your life.
Like literally because you could die.
Survival of the
survival
so
mode.
you have to be alive
Yeah.
so that you do
Gotta
not
wake
die.
up.
I know it's so funny. Even I just pulled a couple photos, and it's like, the big wheel and everyone's
Yeah.
just like hanging, and you're like, you have to be paying attention
Watch
every
your
second.
toes.
Oh yeah.
And seriously, everyone has the moment where a veteran member in the company has legitimately
life.
saved your life. Like where the veterans just like, they just snatch you and like pull you out
The
of the
wheels
way or
coming, they're
something.
like, watch out.
Yeah.
You're like,
Grab you by the scruff of
You
your
are
neck.
gone.
You're like,
And
okay.
you're just like, thank you. Thank you.
I know. I could imagine like being, because obviously they have a repertoire, so that you're being
Yes.
inserted into pieces. You're filling someone else's role. I've got to imagine it's big shoes to fill,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you're a cog in wheels. Honestly, and it's no joke. I mean, it's got to be very intimidating to learn some of their work.
entirely. And when we were given these, lead roles, it was like, what? I've never been on the wheel before, and that takes months of training, and I have to step in right now, and we only have 3 weeks to complete this whole piece, huh? And in the whole process, you're like, you get frustrated because certain things just don't come easily. It's not basic math. You're like, how does my body work on an apparatus that I cannot control at all?
Survival of the fittest.
Totally.
It sounds like.
You
Totally.
feel so defeated sometimes when it doesn't
Yeah.
work out right. You're like, this is stupid.
You're like,
It shouldn't work.
And then when you get
Why?
it, you're like, it's so fun.
Yeah.
I love this piece. It's the best piece I've ever done.
Exactly.
A couple of choreography questions, and it's kind of a two-parter. Cheryl asked one part, Caroline asked the second part. So Cheryl wanted to know who or what are your influences in your choreography, and Caroline wanted to know what your process was for choreography.
That's a good one.
That is a really
Multi-pronged
good
question.
Yeah.
one. Too.
I would probably say people like C.D. Larby or like Crystal Pite,
Totally.
Netherlands Dance Theater,
Yes.
companies like that,
yeah.
where you're like, you never really know what you're going to see from them, like Pilawalis too.
Really outside the box thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot of things all these artists have in common is that they make moments on stage. And that's what we kept going back to in our process. We were like, okay, but is this a moment? Or like, I remember Tabitha telling us in Call Out My Name, she's like, you guys are dancing too much. Like, let us just see the moments that you have. Like, take a couple of things out so you can sit with a moment for a little longer.
We don't need your entire toolbox.
Right.
It's true. I
Yeah.
think artists just we're like, we got all this stuff, let's show them all. But again, it goes back to even that wow moment with Derek of just saying it
Right.
doesn't have to be the big crazy trick that you've done twice or something. It can really be something beautiful and simple and living in that.
Totally. And then our process is a tough one.
Everyone's laughing. I'm glad you're laughing about it.
Man, it takes us like probably the day before the final performance of anything to be like, we got it. We know what the ending is from start to finish. We know this piece, and
No matter how early we start it, we never know till like the day or two before.
we could start a month before, and then it's at the very end of the month, and we're like, okay, we're performing tomorrow. We finally just got the piece. It's like professional procrastination, or we're just perfectionists. I don't know which one.
I used to do that with my term papers. Like I would have all the research done, but I could not write it until the last week because
Yeah.
I just felt creatively like I couldn't do
Totally.
it.
It's a very real thing.
And we'll start our process. It's not like we abandon the mission. We start and we have like 3 different versions of a piece, and then we finally settle on, it's usually the combination between acting theater moments and then the tricks, and we have those 2 versions and we kind of combine them together to be like, this feels like a cohesive piece.
It's a lot of improv too. She'll do something and I'll be like, that's really cool. Let me see what I can do it
Yeah.
again so I can see what
You're
I
a
can
good
do
watcher.
to compliment.
Do you remember your improv?
Yeah, because I'm like, what did
Yeah.
I do? I blacked out. I don't know.
And it's actually a really cool process because I feel like it let us divide and conquer a lot of the time, where like she would do something a few times and I'd be like, yes, that is right. And then I'd be like, you want to see it? And she'd be like, yeah. So then I like we switch, and we both got to have like the outside eye. And then it was just really cool when I thought I was doing something lame, and she'd be like, "No, that's super cool."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wait, but what you're doing is cool. I thought I needed to beef mine up because
We
you're
always
cooler."
feel like the other is outshining the other, and so we're like, no, what do you mean? I think you're outshining me. I'm like, oh really? I think okay, great, we're on the same
cool.
page.
We're
then-
right. We're balanced.
Yeah, we both have to like it at the end of the day
Yeah.
too. Like we sit down and watch the videos of ourselves, and we're like, "Okay, do we like this?"
We do always film our process. We
That's
try
smart.
to get that in at the end of every run. Is just okay. Let's even if you're gonna mark this part, let's just get it so we can see it, because you can't judge a rough draft if it's not completed.
You need a third eye in that room.
Yeah.
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 If you don't have someone sitting there, you need the camera to kind of
Right.
tell you what's happening.
Totally.
And what's working, what's not.
Yeah.
We just came upon the Emmys submission deadline. Did you guys submit? Now, that's a smile.
We did.
You did. Can you tell
submitted.
us what you submitted? What pieces?
We submitted our first 3 rounds.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Those are great and solid and exciting.
yeah.
And we felt like it showed a lot of variety. Like that was another thing.
Levels.
Mm-hmm.
We challenged ourselves on the show to be different every week.
So much so that sometimes people don't know which routine is like, they don't coin us as the same couple because like, oh, you guys did that routine, because we feel like we're different qualities throughout the show. Especially with our third or our fourth round and then our third round, if you compare the quality that was there, it's like very different approaches. So that was one thing we really tried to do, and hopefully that was successful.
Fingers crossed. Those nominations will be announced on July 16th. I will be there live, so I'll text you guys. If I,
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh no, now if I don't hear from you, I'm going to
Yeah.
be
You're
gonna be
stressed
like,
out. I'm going to be like,
it's bad.
it's 9 p.m. and I didn't hear from her.
I'll be texting you at like 5 in the morning. All right. Well, we do have to wrap up. Believe it or not, the hour is
was
over.
fast.
But this was a great sort of conversation. I really love hearing the concert dance side too, because I think it's an important discussion that we need to continue to keep alive,
Totally.
continue to bring to the table. So, for everyone who wants to follow you and find out what you guys are doing post World of Dance, will I see you season 4? You ever coming back?
I
No.
don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No.
There's an answer.
That was an amazing process, but it was
Yeah,
hard.
we feel great with how far we came, and we're proud.
Excellent. So we'll follow you on social media. Where can we find you both?
At Derion Loman on Instagram. Same for Facebook. It's just my name, DerionLoman.
How about you?
And then my Instagram is at Madison, Madison _ OLANDT. Olandt.
And you guys have a joint account too. We do. Derion
Derion
and
and
Madison.
Madison.
Super easy. I love it.
Easy peasy.
All right, you guys, we are going to be back, and next week we're going to take it in a different direction, maybe a little homecoming for you guys. I know, really excited. We want to thank Dance Network and Popcorn Talk for hosting us today. For all of your dance news, check out dancenetwork.tv. We'll see you all next week.
Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network. We would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.